again investigates Hillary Clinton less than 2 weeks before the election, dominating the headlines and prompting partisan sniping from both sides.
Hillary is surrounded by deviants, and that's a problem, and that leaves our security exposed.
It's horrible for Hillary Clinton, but legally, we're at a very preliminary stage.
So the material, in terms of Hillary Clinton and this previous investigation and everything, may be totally insignificant as far as that investigation is concerned. This stuff may mean nothing.
It seems to me that Director Comey did exactly the right thing. He had to go public. Otherwise, he would have been accused after this election of hiding it from the voters.
But are the pundits jumping to conclusions about the new emails discovered by the Bureau? Are commentators on the right and the left switching sides about the integrity of FBI Chief James Comey? And will the press make this the defining issue in the campaign's home stretch? We'll talk to Kellyanne Conway, Trump's campaign manager, and Mark Cuban, a maverick Hillary backer. The FBI's move follows the latest WikiLeaks dump showing that Clinton's top advisors said during the email scandal that she has terrible instincts and a pathological refusal to apologize, and warnings about Bill Clinton's aides hustling business at the Clinton Foundation. Why are these hacked emails finally getting major media attention? Plus, Donald Trump opening a new argument in his attacks on the press.
The media.
And Ruth Marcus, deputy editorial page editor and columnist for The Washington Post. Erin McPike, the FBI launching this inquiry, not reopening the investigation as NBC, Washington Post, Politico, and others originally reported and then retracted. It's obviously a bombshell story, but given that we don't know what's in these emails, should journalists be treating it as a nuclear bomb?
Well, I do think that when it broke on Friday, the media covered it breathlessly, as they should have, because we didn't know what it was going to look like. Now, I think in the days that followed, they've taken a step back and said, okay, we need to actually get our facts straight on this. But I think it was appropriately covered on Friday for sure, as the bombshell that it was.
To that point, Kelly Riddell, here's yesterday's New York Times front page, the entire top half. You can see here 3 different stories about the FBI issue. So obviously it's a big story, but now the Clinton campaign, the press got an email saying, media breathtakingly cover latest supposed Clinton scandal, but when the facts come out, it fizzles. Your take on that line of argument?
My take on it, if it was a GOP nominee, they'd still be all over this. There wouldn't be any questions about the DOJ and its integrity. The press. There would be no question.
You don't think there'd be a single question about what James Comey did?
You know what? I don't believe so. Not the way they're covering it right now. I mean, the Clinton campaign clearly wants to discredit James Comey. They've put out their machine today on all of the Sunday shows. The fact of the matter is we don't know the facts of the matter. So we all have to stay tuned. They cannot say that they want the FBI to be so transparent and put everything out there when they have really delayed this investigation from the very beginning and have been anything but transparent, and that's Clinton's team.
Ruth Marcus, Yahoo's Mike Isikoff reports that the FBI doesn't even know what is in these emails that were on the devices of Huma Abedin and her estranged husband, Anthony Weiner, because the Bureau, as of last night, hadn't even gotten a search warrant. So is it possible that all of this coverage, and I'm not quarreling with the coverage, I mean, this is an explosion in the last 2 weeks, possibly ends up being about something that's not that serious?
Yes, it's absolutely possible. And, you know, it's really a remarkable moment because 1 minute, depending on what side of the political spectrum you're on, Jim Comey is a hero. The next minute, he's a fool, and then vice versa. Either the media is shilling for him by endorsing his decision not to prosecute Hillary Clinton, or they're attacking him. I mean, it goes so many different ways. And look, this is a Donald Rumsfeld moment. There's a lot of known unknowns here. And we have the combination of this sort of soap opera of a presidential campaign and this speeded up media cycle where we have to react instantly. It was imperative for the media to react to this. It's also imperative for us to then kind of pull the lens back and figure out what we know and don't know here.
Well, let me ask you to react to that, because it does kind of reek of hypocrisy. You have a lot of conservative commentators. You have Donald Trump himself blasting Comey's decision not to pursue criminal charges in the original case, and now you're praising him as this fine public servant. Partisan?
It's partisan, but that's politics, right? The media doesn't have has a responsibility to cover this truthfully and honestly. And right now, it just seems like they're just taking the Clinton line that this is all rigged and that the DOJ is in for it for themselves. And you know what? They attacked Donald Trump on those same lines for saying that, oh, the election could be rigged. How that's a threat to democracy? Yet they're running headlines today. The DOJ could be a threat to democracy. Now that's the hypocritical.
Now, I don't speak for the news side of the paper. I speak for the opinion side of the paper, but I'm a little bit confused about how we could simultaneously be accusing the media of overhyping this and responding breathlessly and perhaps over-exaggerating the import of this Comey letter and the consequence, and which, if they were in the tank for Hillary Clinton, they would be downplaying it. So it's a little bit confusing, your argument here.
Let me just get to the flip side, which is you've got lots of liberal commentators and opinion folks who said James Comey is a paragon of integrity. He handled the original investigation so perfectly, and now he's a former Bush administration Republican hack who's unfairly tilting the election. Yeah, I think we saw a lot of this from the media actually on Friday afternoon, that he was kind of damned if he did, damned if he didn't, either way. I don't think he's just a little pawn in this whole story. Ooh, he's not a pawn. He's the director of the FBI.
He's a major actor.
He is a major actor, but he is one character in a huge story. Okay. And I think that we had to cover this in every way. And yes, he made a decision, and he made a decision again, and maybe his decisions were wrong, but he had to do what he had to do.
Right. I mean, he is at this point the absolute leading character of this story.
No, I'm sorry. This is where you're wrong. Hillary Clinton is the leading factor in this story, and the fact that it originated with her.
Other than the two protagonists, the Republican nominee and the Democratic nominee, I think that one of the things that's really important to do, and I'm going to just flack my own newspaper here, take a look at WashingtonPost.com. There's a very powerful op-ed by a former Democratic Deputy Attorney General and Republican Deputy Attorney General.
That's a never Trumper.
He is a never Trumper.
So that's not exactly unbiased.
Disclosed, who have both spent a lot of time in the Justice Department supervising FBI investigations, who are appalled by this.
Were they appalled? Did they write an op-ed when Bill Clinton and Loretta Lynch met on the tarmac about how disgusted and appalled they were about that? I think that then that's a double standard.
No, it's not a double standard.
Yes, it is.
No. And, you know, then...
If you don't know, so you're not going to investigate what went on in that 39-minute meeting?
Well, certainly the media covered that.
If that wasn't a conflict of interest.
I don't know about these two individuals. The media covered that extensively. Let me just pull back the camera just a moment. How bizarre is it that Anthony Weiner, who's sexting a girl who said she was 15, and the FBI investigation of that, and of course he's married to Huma Abedin, and that drags Hillary Clinton into the FBI dragnet. I mean, if you wrote this as a Hollywood script, it would be rejected as just outlandish. How bizarre is it that the Weiner angle is now, you know, brought us to where we are?
Well, I think it's totally bizarre, you know, and that's kind of something that Hillary Clinton has to deal with. But look at the people she keeps around her. I think this is a thing that we need to look at more closely going into the last couple weeks of the election, the last 10 days, 9 days. And then if she is elected, the counsel that she keeps. This is a big problem. She seems to have this very insular circle, and she can't seem to get rid of the people who are causing her trouble.
There are a lot of examples of that. Let me turn to WikiLeaks, which I thought was a very damaging story, a couple of days of disclosures. For example, I'm not going to have time to put it up on the screen, but Neera Tanden is a co-chairperson of her transition team saying who actually told Hillary she could use a private email. The whole thing is blanking insane. This was, and the Clinton Foundation stuff, the lead story one day in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, Above the Fold, led to CBS Evening News, led to NBC Nightly News. Why do you think it's breaking through where the earlier WikiLeaks stuff did not?
Because there was a memo by Doug Band that said, quite specifically...
Doug Band, longtime Bill Clinton confidant.
Yeah, how they used the charity to enrich President Clinton. So that was the bombshell there.
Yeah, it was, but people seem to think that this just came out. In the fall of 2013, the New Republic did a cover story called Clinton Inc. A first-rate investigative reporter by the name of Alec McGillis wrote this story. Okay, this is not a new thing. And in fact, Juliana Goldman at CBS has done many stories about the Clinton Foundation and its entanglements. It's taken this scandal to really make it into the public
But what is
consciousness.
new here is that you have the inner circle of Hillary Clinton in private memos, which were hacked emails that we never should have seen, but nevertheless, criticizing her and the people around her and her husband, including Chelsea Clinton, for their handling. But Ruth, you wrote today in the Washington Post, the Clintons' unseemly money chase is repulsive, talking about all the dealings around the foundation. And doesn't this play into a media narrative that the Clintons skirt ethical rules, that they're obsessed with making money, they're too close to big donors and corporations and all that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it does. And, it's perfectly possible to both have a view about Donald Trump's fitness to be president, to have a view about Hillary Clinton's fitness to be president, and to say with all honesty that there are aspects of her behavior and character and aspects of Bill Clinton's behavior and character that are a mark against them. And that's my piece in this morning's paper basically argues that the best thing for Bill Clinton to do as first gentleman, if he gets there, is to fade from the scene.
Just go away. Well, we'll see if that happens. It's kind of hard to imagine. All right, let me get a break. Write to us about the media buzz at foxnews.com. When we come back, look at how the press is handling the continuing controversy over Donald Trump's female accusers, how he and his surrogates are pushing back. And later, a leading voice for each candidate, Kellyanne Conway, who runs the Trump campaign, and Mark Cuban, a Hillary Clinton supporter. A couple more this week. It's now 11 or 12, and he continues to call them liars and attack the press coverage. Aaron McPike, is this still a big story? It has come up in a number of interviews that Trump has done in recent time.
And he should be continued to get asked about it. He should. It is an important story. Nobody's really gotten to the bottom of it, but it's clear that this FBI story has pushed it out of the front pages.
Right, and I think it was fading a bit before that. Well, let's look at something that has been covered, I would say, by every media outlet on the planet, and that was a lengthy and testy exchange between Megyn Kelly and former House Speaker and now Fox News contributor Newt Gingrich on the Kelly file.
If Trump is a sexual predator, that is...
He's not a sexual predator.
Okay,
you
that's
can't
your
say
opinion.
that.
I'm not taking a position
defend
on
that
it.
statement.
I'm not
sick
taking a
and
position
tired
on
of
it.
people like you using language that's inflammatory that's not true.
Excuse me, Mr. Speaker.
Donald
you have
Trump
no
was not
idea whether it's true or not. What we know is that there are at least...
Neither do you.
That's right, and I'm not taking a position on it, unlike
yes, you are. We want to go back through the tapes of your show recently. You are fascinated with sex, and you don't care about public policy.
Me?
Now, that's
Really?
what I get out of watching you tonight.
You know what, Mr. Speaker, I'm not fascinated by sex, but I am fascinated by the protection of women and understanding what we're getting in the Oval Office.
And it went on. Your thoughts on that exchange?
I thought she handled it remarkably well. And I think there are lots of other anchors who might not have handled it so well, who may have gotten flustered, who may have gotten angry. But she proved again why she has been the most consequential anchor, I think, of this election cycle. And that is why you saw all these other media outlets cover it, because she's done so well.
How about Newt Gingrich? You've covered him in the past.
I have, and I covered his presidential race in 2011 and 2012. And Newt Gingrich certainly knows how to make news. I thought this was an interesting and puzzling way for him to go about it, given what took him out of politics. But he does know how to make news, and he certainly did it that night.
Right, and Gingrich was there as a Trump supporter, and he made it very personal, though. And he went on to dare Megyn Kelly to say that Bill Clinton was a sexual predator, and she said her show would cover that whole issue.
She wouldn't do it, though, did she? She wouldn't do it. You know, she used...
Her response was...
She did not say Bill Clinton is a sexual predator.
Kathleen Willey, and that nor is she saying that Donald Trump's a sexual predator.
Yes, she did. She implied that. She used language from CNN.
Kelly, the sentence began with if. If what these women are saying is true. So I don't think you should say that Megyn Kelly is saying that one is and one isn't. She's saying she covered it. But I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, I don't think Megyn Kelly looked good in that interview. I don't think that Newt Gingrich looked good in that interview, especially when he started wagging his finger at Megyn Kelly. That looked particularly bad. But, you know, I think it's Megyn Kelly shopping for a new job. And that could have been part of the reason why she, you know, took on Newt Gingrich in that way.
Why is it not Megyn Kelly doing an interview the best that she can when she was suddenly personally under attack by a guest?
It could very well be that.
Okay.
I'm saying people from the right side of things or Trump supporters also think that that, you know, she has new network contract negotiations going on.
Well, if Megyn Kelly's shopping for a new job, I thought she did a pretty good job of selling herself. No, I am saying that I thought she behaved strongly and appropriately, and this was an interview where one person seemed overwrought and a little out of control and was wagging his finger, and the other person was entirely in control and trying to stick to the facts and stick to what, as you pointed out accurately, she actually said.
Well, Newt Gingrich is a passionate guy. As we remember from 2012, he doesn't think much of the mainstream media. He ran against the media partially in that campaign. And it's just amazing to me how much coverage that this got. But just to finish up on this, let's turn to this, and let me get a brief response from each of you. We could go, everybody in the press saying race is over, who's going to be in Hillary's cabinet. Has the journalistic mindset on this now reset in light of this FBI inquiry? Aaron?
I think it has slightly, at least for a couple of days, and I think reporters did take it seriously. Okay, we have a race again.
Kelly?
The polls are tightening. It shows you we have a race again. ABC poll is now within 1. It was within 12 last week.
Ruth?
I think we're all learning the "it's not over till it's over" lesson, especially in this soap opera campaign.
The Yogi Berra line really counts. I sat on this set and I said, I know it looks like certainly it's an uphill climb for Trump, but let's not all be in the prediction business. And then I saw like who's going to be Hillary Clinton's, agriculture secretary, and she may. I don't know. I have no inside knowledge. She may still win. Great to see you all. Ruth Marcus, Kelly Riddell, Aaron McPike. Thanks for joining us this Sunday. Ahead, Kellyanne Conway with the Trump campaign's view of the new FBI inquiry into Hillary Clinton's email, I should say, and businessman and NBA owner Mark Cuban on why he's campaigning against Donald Trump. But first, a spate of Trump interviews this week will show you the best and the worst in our video verdict. Donald Trump did a round of interviews this week, venturing beyond Fox News, and a couple of them turned pretty testy, while one was not. On Good Morning America, George Stephanopoulos brought up Trump's threat to sue the 11 or so women who've accused him of sexual misconduct.
She would have gotten the Pulitzer Prize. Give me a break.
Stephanopoulos was pressing him on his blanket dismissal of his accusers, and Trump, as usual, pushed back hard. CNN's Dana Bash asked why Trump was taking time away from the campaign trail to plug the new opening of his D.C. hotel.
And so to people who say you're taking time out of swing states to go do this, you say?
For you to ask me that question is actually very insulting, because Hillary Clinton does one stop and then she goes home and sleeps. And yet you'll ask me that question. I think it's a very rude question, to be honest with you.
Actually, it's kind of a bogus issue. Trump did a lot of interviews when he was here in Washington, but the question was asked in a fair way. A very different approach from Mark Halperin of Bloomberg News and MSNBC, who was, shall we say, kinder and gentler.
Did it feel differently to you? People are reacting like this is a different tone, a different way of talking about your candidacy. What people say, this was a great Trump speech. As far as you're concerned, they're all great. You've redefined how candidates talk about polls. Some polls now you're winning, some you're behind. We've got a new poll where you're up in Florida. Yeah. What's your general sense of where you are in the battleground states? Florida, Iowa, Ohio?
I think we will soon be winning New Hampshire. We're going up there.
New poll today shows you closer.
Mark Halperin is a good journalist, and I know he has to maintain access to Trump for his various platforms, but that was soft. Coming up, Shark Tank star Mark Cuban on why he turned against his fellow billionaire. But up next, Trump campaign chief Kellyanne Conway on her candidate, the media, Hillary Clinton, and, of course, the new FBI probe. With the presidential race taking another surprise turn this weekend, let's go to Trump Tower, New York, where joining us is Kellyanne Conway, Donald Trump's campaign manager. Kellyanne, welcome.
Hi, Howie.
So Donald Trump had been going around saying the FBI investigation of Hillary Clinton was rigged as recently as Friday morning. He said the FBI should be ashamed. Now, I know this is a separate inquiry, but your campaign's view of James Comey and his decision-making suddenly seems a lot more favorable.
Well, the fact that it's a separate investigation is the key here. In July, on July 5th, in fact, Jim Comey went out and gave this rousing indictment of Hillary Clinton and how reckless and careless she was, and then said yet he would not prosecute. 2 days later, under oath to Congress, Howie, he said that he basically undercut his own conclusion and then undercut Hillary Clinton's own words. When he was asked under oath by Chairman Trey Gowdy, he said there was not one device, there were 13, there were multiple devices. Yes, it is true there was classified national security information contained in those emails on her private server. So he undercut his own conclusion and he undercut her words. This investigation is separate. And I think I could argue that had Comey sat on this new information, he would have been impacting the election. We can't have that.
Well, but is it possible, since even the FBI, according to reports, doesn't know what these emails are, hasn't reviewed the emails on the devices of Huma Abedin and Anthony Weiner, that this could turn out to be nothing? Would you acknowledge that?
It's possible, but so what? In other words, what we're reminded of is the cloud of corruption that always follows Hillary Clinton. And we're having this entire conversation about a renewed FBI investigation because Hillary Clinton did what she always does, put Hillary first. She put Hillary first above national security, above the safety of Americans. And she could put this all to rest right now. She can call into your show right now, Howie, and say, I just talked to Huma Abedin, and here's what's in those emails. But they won't do that. They won't make any comment about Huma and what could possibly be in those emails. So she probably knows a lot more than we know right now.
The Clinton campaign has not commented on the substance. That is true. They've concentrated the firepower on Comey.
Instead, they're attacking Jim Comey. Instead, they're attacking his reputation, his veracity. I thought on the morning shows today, her team, who is filled with smart people, did a fairly terrible job trying to defend the strategy of taking down Jim Comey and demanding that he expedite his investigation so that we can see everything right away.
Right. But let me get to this. Donald Trump has been saying repeatedly that if he's elected, he would reopen the original FBI investigation of Hillary Clinton. And he said during the debate, if he was president, she'd be in jail. Now, a lot of people, some people, I should say, sympathetic to Donald Trump, have been saying that in a democracy, a presidential candidate shouldn't be vowing to prosecute his opponent.
Well, Jim Comey went ahead and did what Donald Trump said he would do, which is reopen the FBI investigation. So it turns out
technically, it's not a reopening; it's a separate inquiry, as you noted. But should Trump?
Fine, but here we are. We can never get the stench and the stain of the Clintons off of us. It turns out,
all right.
And this is a great example of that. But look, what Donald Trump has said is that he believes there was criminal wrongdoing, and he knows anybody else. The military guy who took pictures inside the submarine, who's now going to face a year in jail. Certainly, General James Cartwright faces 5 years in prison and a $250,000 fine for lying to the FBI one time, confirming information to 2 New York Times reporters that they'd already written, and he was trying to protect national security interests. And this guy faces jail time. So we know this is all about a separate set of rules for Hillary Clinton and the rest of us.
All right. You've criticized the media coverage of Donald Trump, and there's been an avalanche of negative coverage, and we've talked about that extensively
unprecedented
on this show. But do you agree with your boss that many mainstream journalists are dishonest and corrupt?
I think what we saw in WikiLeaks is that in the case of some individuals, certainly not most or all, that some are definitely in active collusion with and cooperation with the Clinton campaign. And you simply can't have an interested, biased press in that regard, where you literally have print journalist Howie saying, hey, if there's any problem with the article I'm about to file, if you'd like to add a little bit more or subtract some, feel free to do it. We just can't have that. We can't have them saying, I'd like to do a really nice profile of Mrs. Clinton. Don't worry, she'll look great in it. That's not journalism. That's advocacy, and that's collusion. And some of these individuals, frankly, should be getting a check from the Clinton campaign, not from their, quote, disinterested
That's fair.
press
I mean, the collusion description is fair. Some of this is coziness that I've written about and talked about. You're not using the word corrupt. Same question about polls. Now, Donald Trump has been talking about phony polls. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think you believe the polls are phony, and I wonder if you've asked him to stop saying that.
Well, some of the polls are just dead wrong because they're not accounting for all the new voters and the lapsed voters and the crossover voters. They're relying upon listed sample, not intention to vote. And I don't think that they're giving people a comfortable out, particularly would-be Clinton voters. They're not giving them a comfortable out to admit that they may just not feel very excited and engaged this particular election cycle because of who's at the top of the ticket. What we do look at a poll like the ABC News Washington Post poll, which 1 week ago showed us down 12 points and now shows us down 1 point. And all those who enthusiastically embrace the ABC News Washington Post poll have to live with it now when it shows us 1 point behind. They're trying to figure out how to do that. But I think what Donald Trump is saying is something I've been saying for months and months under a hail of criticism, by the way, and people like Ed Rendell are saying the same thing now, which is there's an undercover Trump voter. These polls are probably undercounting his support because of the enthusiasm and the momentum and the engagement. And this idea, I've seen these press reports, Howie, where they'll say, well, we know there are 15,000 people at this rally. Some of them waited in line for up to 8 hours to get in. Right. But will they vote? Seriously, will they vote? Right. They were there for 8 hours in the rain, and will they actually vote? You know they're going to vote.
It's fine to criticize the polls, but obviously that's different than saying they're phony. Let me get another question in here. The heavy media coverage of the FBI opening this inquiry, and in recent days of the WikiLeaks disclosures about the inner circle criticizing Hillary Clinton and the Clinton Foundation, Bill Clinton Inc., and all of that, doesn't that show that the press is willing to hold Hillary Clinton accountable as well as Donald Trump?
It shows that they can't ignore breaking news, and frankly, even the WikiLeaks, it actually wasn't covered on all these front pages until it involved the pay-for-play with Bill Clinton. Until you saw the words Bill Clinton Inc., $66 million worth of commercial interest for him going to him. Kimberly Strassel at the Wall Street Journal calling them grifters in chief. So I think it really took it to go all the way to the top for folks to get interested. That said, this is a breaking news story, and frankly, Howie, if you look at what was covered last week before the WikiLeaks stories broke about Bill Clinton and before the FBI investigation was revealed, it was all about how the race is over. Right. The path is narrow. The path is gone. That's really disingenuous journalism when we know most of America has yet to vote. We should not be robbing America of its voice and its choice.
I got to wrap it up. I sat on this set and said, don't call it over, folks. 2 weeks is a long time in politics. Kellyanne Conway.
And here we are.
Great to see you. Thanks very much. And Mark Cuban, the one-time Trump pal now campaigning for Hillary Clinton, is coming up next. And later, how Juan Williams became the latest victim of WikiLeaks. Now for the other side. I spoke earlier from Dallas with Mark Cuban, chairman of the cable network Access, owner of the Dallas Mavericks, and a supporter of Hillary Clinton. Mark Cuban, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
You were pals with Donald Trump, two rich guys, friendly rivals maybe. He had The Apprentice, you started The Benefactor. Why did you decide to turn on him?
Well, I never really turned on him early on, right? We just had a little rivalry, and that was fun, and, you know, it was just for yucks. But once he decided to run, I actually was very positive about him at the beginning. I thought he was candid, open, honest. But, you know, at some point, you have to dig in and learn the issues. And, you know, I told him specifically, you've got to understand what you're talking about. And I think that's where he fell short. And that's why I wouldn't say turned against him, but went in a different direction.
So he didn't take your advice. But at the same time, it seems kind of personal. I've heard you say he flaunts his wealth. It seems like you kind of resent Donald Trump.
No, I don't resent Donald Trump at all. You know, it's just, look, if he was running for anything other than president of the United States, I could care less. It's an important office, so I thought it was important to reflect on what I thought about him.
Now, you would have to admit, I know you're for Hillary Clinton, and we'll get into that in a second, that the media coverage of Trump in the last couple of months has been pretty overwhelmingly negative.
Well, that's of his own making, isn't it? You know, if you're going to say the things that he says, if you're going to, you know, make the flippant comments that he makes, you're going to get covered. I mean, look, all he had to do was shut up 9 out of 10 times, and the coverage would be distinctly different. It's just not something he's capable of doing.
Well, certainly some of his own words have been used as ammunition against him, but you don't detect that in the media establishment there is a certain hostility toward Trump?
No, I mean, look, on the way up, he was happy to ride the train, right? He bragged about media coverage. He was excited about it. He loved the live look-ins, the live coverage of everything he did during the primaries and early on in the presidential race. It's a two-edged sword. You know that. We all know that. So that if you're going to love it on the way up, you know, everybody's going to turn on you at some point, and you've got to be able to deal with it.
Well, even on the way up, he was often criticizing the dishonest media and singling out news organizations. I mean,
yeah, that's your shtick.
He punches back. Well, it's a shtick that, you know, any politician's entitled to do. Now, I've seen you at all the debates, so I'm wondering, how did you go from emerging as a kind of a Trump critic to being an open advocate for Hillary Clinton?
Well, once once I kind of decided that Donald wasn't qualified to be president, before I endorsed Secretary Clinton, I had to do my homework. I mean, I'm a tech guy, so I dug in on the email issues, and it was clear to me that she dealt with all of her classified documents using hard copy. So, and the FBI reports confirm that. You know, I dug in and did my own research on the foundation. You know, there'd never been any reported evidence of pay to play. I saw that the foundation did good things. So once I ticked off the things that were kind of the media issues, the branding issues that were assigned against her, I then decided to endorse her.
All right, but it sounds also like your main goal is to stop Trump. Let me ask you this.
No, not necessarily. I think she'll be, to be clear, I think she'll be a good president.
Many people feel that the mainstream press is in the tank, not the Shark Tank, but in the tank for Hillary Clinton, and at least have been much easier on her. Your thoughts?
Well, first you have to decide what's mainstream press. Is it, is it the cable news network with the highest ratings, or, who is mainstream? But that aside, I don't think there's any question that there are certain reporters that favor Hillary, and there are certain reporters that favor Donald, and some have more visibility than others. But to say one's in the tank for the other, or the other, I don't see as a platform that you can say mainstream media is got it in for Donald and is very pro Hillary Clinton.
What was your relationship with Trump like before this campaign? And tell me a little bit more about this conversation in which you say you advised him to drill down more on the issues, and did he say that he would? I mean, tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I'm not going to tell you that we're friends. I mean, acquaintances at best for the longest time. We really just started talking. When I said that he was the best thing that happened to politics because he's open and honest and not scripted, then he reached out to me, and he called me a couple times, and we had some conversations. But the majority of our interactions were me sending an email to his assistant printing them out, him writing a reply, her scanning it back to me, and then resending it back to me as an email. And we would have a lot of give and take. And so one time I went on one of the networks and said, look, at this point in time, I'm not supporting Donald. I think, A, B, and C are issues. And he reached out to me and said, what happened? And I sent him an in-depth email, detailing what I just told you.
Well, interesting. So he wanted the owner of the Dallas Mavericks on his team, but it obviously didn't work out, or you concluded.
Didn't work out, yeah.
All right. Now, look, this campaign has obviously raised your profile. So in a Trumpian kind of way, are you building your brand? And having told the Washington Post at one point that Trump has paved the way for someone like you to run for high office, is you laying the groundwork for 2020 here?
No, absolutely not. Maybe at the beginning that was a possibility, but, now here we are, 10 days or whatever it is prior to the election, and it's the exact opposite. I think rather than paving the way for somebody who's a celebrity or a business person or an entrepreneur, it's actually had a negative effect now. Anybody in my position that would run going forward is going to be compared to Donald, and that's not a positive association.
But just briefly, is all the political visibility here helping to build your personal brand?
No, not necessarily. I mean, in Texas, it certainly is not an automatic benefit. So no, I wouldn't say it's about building my personal brand at all. I mean, I have a platform. It's really easy for me to get on media. It's really easy for me to send out a message. And I've been apolitical my entire adult life. And so, if I were really focused on building my brand, I wouldn't do it by associating with politics at all. That'd be the worst possible way to do it.
I hear you. Mark Cuban, thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks, Howard. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
I spoke to Mark Cuban just before news of the FBI investigation. After the break, Donald Trump expands his indictment of the media, which are increasingly complaining about Trump supporters hurling abuse at journalists. That's next.
The media is entitled, condescending, and even contemptuous of the people who don't share their elitist views. And this is all for money.
Joining us now from New York is Joe Concha, media reporter for The Hill. Now, Joe, does Donald Trump have a point in saying that the media are also unfair to the millions who support him, and to use his word, contemptuous?
Absolutely, Howie. We saw that cover story in the Week magazine where Trump supporters are put up on the cover story brandishing AR-15s and pitchforks, and if he loses, they're going to burn down the house, burn down the country, and that's certainly an unfair portrayal. But I look at a poll this week, Howie, AP, that shows that 87% of Trump supporters feel that the media is biased against him. But here's the compelling part of the poll that's kind of buried a little bit. by a 4-to-1 margin. 4-to-1. Clinton supporters, quote, feel there's more bias against Trump than bias in his favor. So given that both sides see that Trump is getting a raw deal in the press, I think it's almost delusional, or at least dishonest, to say that Trump is engaging in conspiracy theories, saying that the press is against him. Raw data and opinion polls contradict that argument.
Yeah, I think the biggest failing of the press in this cycle in a long time has been to be out of touch with the millions of working-class Americans who are angry and frustrated at the political system and who Trump has tapped into. Now, this is becoming a major issue, which is anger that Trump supporters are showing toward the journalists when they're roped off areas at the rallies. Washington Post, the press always got booed at Trump rallies, but now the aggression is menacing. Politico, Trump crowds rain hate on the press. CNN's Jim Acosta showed a swastika on the word media. Is it fair to blame Trump for that?
No, I don't believe it is. And remember that one report with Acosta, and I think Jim Acosta is a fine journalist, and I'm not doubting his credibility here, but I have to wonder, when he finds a banner with the swastika on it, how did that get there in the first place? And the reason why I asked the question, Howie, is because given what we saw with the Project Veritas James O'Keefe tapes, where,
the press always finds that Trump supporters who say, there'll be a revolution if he loses, I'm going to get my musket. But that's not necessarily the majority, and also it doesn't mean that Donald Trump doesn't have the right to call out the press as he sees fit.
Absolutely. I mean, Howie, look, it used to be hot air with Trump as far as the press is against me. Every Republican says that. But the WikiLeaks foundations that show, the revelations as far as the document dumps, that show collusion, that show advising of campaigns, quote approval, giving a source actual veto power, sharing stories in advance. This gives the Trump argument that the press is biased against him foundation, and people see that and they say, you know what, he does have a point.
Those instances are embarrassing. Joe Concha, great to see you, and still to come, the journalist who got harassed after his phone number showed up on WikiLeaks. Like a token black on Fox, corrupt, a liberal stooge, a sellout, and what was Williams' sin? Here's what he wrote to Podesta after bumping into him. John, good Sunday morning. As mentioned, I'd love to have a chance to speak with you when you get back from your travels. That's right. He wanted to talk to the man running the campaign of the likely Democratic nominee. It's called reporting. And anyone who doesn't get that doesn't understand journalism. Remember when those 6-second videos were really hot? Vine amassed a huge following for the ridiculously short little clips, but now, rest in peace, Twitter is shutting down the app. Here's my explanation.
There are many reasons why Vine failed. Let me run through the whole list. Number one, oops, my 6 seconds is up.
Vine could no longer compete with Instagram and Snapchat. In the blink of an eye, the cool thing was no longer cool. Twitter having its own problems, by the way, trying to sell itself. Well, that's it for this edition of Media Buzz. I'm Howard Kurtz. Thanks for watching. We hope you'll like our Facebook page. Check it out. We post a lot of original content there. We post videos responding to your questions. MediaBuzz@foxnews.com. Question or a comment about the media. And let's continue the conversation on Twitter @Howard Kurtz. Some of you are not exactly shy about telling me what you think. We had a lot to get through this morning. We're happy to get the Kellyanne Conway and Mark Cuban interviews. Remember, we're back here next Sunday morning, 11 a.m. Eastern, 2 days before the election with the latest buzz.